Hey, welcome to our Reddit. The summer sun blazed down on Maplewood Drive, casting a golden glow over the neighborhood. Children laughed and played in the front yards, their excitement palpable as they anticipated the familiar jingle of the ice cream truck. For years, Mr. Swanson's ice cream truck had been a beloved fixture in the neighborhood, bringing joy to kids and parents alike. However, there was one resident who didn't share this sentiment. Karen Thompson, a middle-aged woman with a perpetual scowl and an overbearing presence, had recently moved into the neighborhood. From day one, she had made her displeasure with the ice cream truck known. It all started one hot July afternoon. Karen was sitting on her porch, sipping lemonade, when the ice cream truck's music began to play. Her face contorted in irritation. "This is unacceptable," she muttered to herself. She stormed off her porch and marched towards the source of her ire. Mr. Swanson, a kind-hearted man in his 60s, was serving a group of children when Karen approached, her hands on her hips. "Excuse me," she barked, startling everyone. "Do you have any idea how loud and annoying that music is?" Mr. Swanson, ever the gentleman, gave her a polite smile. "I'm sorry if it's bothering you, ma'am." The kids seemed to love it. "Well, I don't. It's disruptive and ruins my peace. You need to turn it off or leave the neighborhood," Karen demanded, her voice rising. The children looked up at Mr. Swanson with worried eyes. He sighed and nodded. "I'll turn it down a bit," he said, adjusting the volume. Karen huffed and marched back to her house, but not before glaring at the kids, who quickly looked away. For the next few days, the ice cream truck's music was noticeably quieter, but Karen wasn't satisfied. She wanted it gone. Determined to rid her neighborhood of what she saw as a nuisance, Karen began her campaign. First, she created a petition. She went door to door, ranting about the ice cream truck and demanding signatures from her neighbors. Most people were taken aback by her intensity. Some signed just to get her off their porch, but others refused. "Come on, Karen, it's just an ice cream truck." "The kids love it," said Mrs. Martinez, a mother of 2 young children. "Well, I don't, and it's disturbing my peace. If you won't sign, then I'll just have to find another way," Karen snapped before stomping off. Next, Karen called the city council, filing noise complaints and citing made-up ordinances. Each time, she was met with polite but firm refusals. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but there's no law against ice cream trucks playing music," the council representative explained. Frustrated but undeterred, Karen decided to confront Mr. Swanson again. This time, she brought reinforcements, her cousin Larry, who worked as a lawyer. They waited by the curb, arms crossed, as the truck rolled into the neighborhood. "Mr. Swanson," Karen called out as the truck stopped, "I'd like you to meet my cousin Larry. He's a lawyer, and he's here to inform you that your truck is a public nuisance." Larry stepped forward, puffing out his chest. "That's right. If you don't cease this incessant noise, we will take legal action." Mr. Swanson, who had been serving ice cream for decades without incident, looked from Karen to Larry and back again. "I'm just trying to bring some joy to these kids," he said quietly. "Well, you're causing me a lot of stress, and that's not acceptable," Karen retorted. "Consider this your final warning." The children watched in confusion and fear as the confrontation unfolded. Mr. Swanson sighed and handed out the last few ice creams before driving off. The kids were crestfallen, but Karen was undeterred. She was certain she had won. The next day, however, Mr. Swanson returned, his music playing at a reasonable volume. Karen's face turned beet red. She couldn't believe he had the nerve to defy her. Furious, she stormed into her house and began drafting a letter to the local newspaper, detailing the menace of the ice cream truck. As Karen's tirade continued, the neighborhood began to rally around Mr. Swanson. Parents and children alike signed a counter-petition in support of the ice cream truck. They wrote letters to the city council, praising the joy and sense of community it brought. One afternoon, the neighborhood kids decided to take matters into their own hands. They crafted homemade signs reading, "We love Mr. Swanson," and "Save our ice cream truck," and held a peaceful protest in front of Karen's house. Karen watched from her window, her anger boiling over. She stormed outside, ready to confront the children, but their parents quickly intervened. "Enough, Karen," shouted Mr. Martinez. "This truck has been a part of our community for years. It's time you accepted that." Karen looked around, seeing the determined faces of her neighbors. Realizing she was outnumbered, She retreated back into her house, slamming the door behind her. The following week, the city council held a meeting to address the complaints. Karen, accompanied by Larry, stood before the council, presenting her case. She spoke passionately about the noise and the disruption to her life. But then, one by one, her neighbors stood up to speak in defense of the ice cream truck. Mrs. Martinez spoke about the joy it brought to her children. Mr. Johnson, an elderly man, shared how the truck's visits reminded him of his own childhood. Even the local school principal voiced support, highlighting the positive impact on the community. When it was Mr. Swanson's turn to speak, he simply said, "I've been doing this for 30 years. I just want to make people happy." The council members deliberated briefly before delivering their verdict. The ice cream truck could stay. They suggested Mr. Swanson keep the volume at a reasonable level, but they saw no reason to ban it. Karen was livid, but there was nothing she could do. Defeated, she stormed out of the meeting, with Larry trailing behind her. Life on Maplewood Drive slowly returned to normal. The ice cream truck continued its rounds, the music playing softly as children ran to meet it. Karen, though still unhappy, had no choice but to tolerate it. Over time, she found herself spending less time outside, avoiding the sound that had caused her so much frustration. One day, months later, Karen sat on her porch with a resigned look on her face as the ice cream truck rolled by. A little girl from next door, seeing Karen's sour expression, ran up to her with a melting popsicle in hand. "Would you like some ice cream, Mrs. Thompson?" the girl asked sweetly. Karen stared at the girl, taken aback by the innocent gesture. She sighed and took the popsicle. "Thank you," she said quietly, a hint of a smile tugging at her lips. As the ice cream truck's music played softly in the background, Karen took a bite of the popsicle, savoring the sweet taste. For the first time, she allowed herself to see the joy it brought to the children. Maybe, just maybe, she could learn to live with it. Thank you for watching our Reddit. If you like my content and want to support me, don't forget to like and subscribe.